Maybe this message has found you because something in your soul is stirring, not loud, not urgent, just quietly awakening. You see, your spiritual journey isn't linear, it's more like a spiral, a sacred unfolding through layers of remembrance, release, and return. Ancient mystics and modern thinkers like Ken Wilber, with his Spectrum of Consciousness, or M. Scott Peck, author of The Road Less Traveled, have echoed the same truth. We evolve through levels of perception, each one inviting us to see, feel, and serve more deeply, from feeling lost in the fog of routine, to realizing there's more beyond the veil, to touching the edges of unity with all of life. And yet, most people don't realize they've already begun this path, because spiritual evolution rarely announces itself with fireworks. It often starts in silence, discomfort, or a subtle question. Why does this no longer fulfill me? What am I really here for? Am I losing myself or finally finding who I've always been? There are 5 key stages of spiritual evolution, not as rigid boxes, but as energetic thresholds. Each one shifts your frequency. Each one reveals a deeper truth. Each one asks you to surrender a version of yourself, to become something more real. And today, I'll gently guide you through these 5 levels, not as a map to rush through, but as mirrors to recognize where your soul already stands and where it longs to grow. What if the next leap in your consciousness isn't about doing more, but finally becoming who you already are? Let's begin. It often begins quietly, not with visions or revelations, but with a subtle restlessness, a whisper inside the soul that says, there must be something more. This is the first sacred rupture, the shift from unconscious autopilot to a deeper noticing. The routine no longer nourishes you. The noise of the world feels louder, and for the first time you begin to listen inward. At this stage, many experience what feels like a spiritual surge, powerful meditations, unexplained synchronicities, even emotional intensity. But be mindful, the initial euphoria can be deceptive. Without grounding, these energies can fragment the self rather than awaken it. One of the silent traps here is seeking too much, too fast, jumping into advanced practices, rituals, or manifestation techniques without first learning the sacred art of presence. And when the high fades, many feel lost, overwhelmed, or broken, believing they've done something wrong. But in truth, they've simply skipped the most essential foundation, the body as anchor, the breath as gateway. A simple practice for this phase. Sit in stillness. 5 minutes. Close your eyes, let the breath find its rhythm. Let the body become a vessel of presence. No visions needed, just return to the space beneath thought, where your real awakening begins. A woman once shared, "At first, I felt a strange heat moving through my chest. I thought it was something mystical, but it was grief. Long buried, now rising like a wave. That heat was resistance, and beneath it was me finally feeling." This stage is not about escaping. It's about entering, fully, consciously, with reverence for what's already inside you. Awakening isn't an event, it's a remembering. Once presence deepens, something unexpected begins to happen. Old memories rise, unexplained emotions surface. Your heart, once numb, starts to ache. Not from pain, but from remembrance. This is the level of emotional purification, a necessary descent into the layers we were taught to ignore. Here, spiritual evolution doesn't look like light. It looks like crying in silence, questioning your worth, revisiting wounds you thought were long buried. But don't mistake this for regression. It is, in truth, a return to the parts of you that were exiled in the name of survival. Signs you're evolving at this stage include deeper sleep and vivid dreams, heightened energetic sensitivity, a strange mix of emotional vulnerability and inner strength. But there is a silent error many make here. They confuse emotional consciousness with being emotive, believing that spiritual maturity means expressing everything they feel all the time. In truth, Real maturity is spacious. It holds emotion without drowning in it. It feels deeply without acting impulsively. Another common sabotage arises when one tries to repress this phase, attempting to stay positive or move on too quickly. But emotions that are buried alive will always return, shaping our thoughts, our relationships, and even our health. Neuroscientist and cell biologist Bruce Lipton once said, "Your cells are listening to your beliefs." The placebo effect and epigenetics reveal that the body doesn't just respond to medicine, but to meaning. To support this stage, try a simple tool, EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. Gently tap key meridian points while affirming what you're ready to release. For example, even though I carry this fear, I deeply honor my healing. The body begins to soften. The energy starts to move. The inner child feels safe enough to speak. At this level, healing doesn't come through thinking. It comes through feeling, fully, consciously, and without shame. Emotional awareness is not the end of suffering. It's the beginning of sacred compassion for yourself and for the world within you. After facing your inner world, something profound begins to shift in how you relate to others. You start to see people, not just their words or roles, but their essence, their wounds, their longing. Empathy expands beyond the personal. You feel when a room is heavy. You sense what goes unsaid. You begin to notice the invisible threads connecting all things. This is the level of the relational mind, where spiritual evolution invites you to bring presence into the spaces between you and the other. But with this gift comes a new set of challenges. One of the most common traps here is spiritual codependence, believing that it is your job to heal others, to absorb their pain, or to fix their path. This arises from a beautiful but unbalanced intention to love. Yet without boundaries, universal love becomes emotional fusion. You lose your center in the name of connection. And when that happens, what we call compassion becomes self-erasure. Another subtle distortion appears as the need to be radically honest, speaking every truth, no matter how raw or painful, in the name of authenticity. But truth without tenderness wounds, and honesty without empathy fractures trust in others and in yourself. To evolve at this level is to integrate a new kind of communication, nonviolent communication, NVC, a path that allows you to express what is real without creating separation. You begin to speak like this: I feel hurt, not because of what you did, but because this touched something tender inside of me. This is not weakness, this is spiritual strength, the kind that dissolves projections and builds sacred bridges. Neuroscience supports this evolution. The Galatea effect shows that when you believe in the inner potential of someone, they begin to align with that vision. Your presence becomes a mirror that elevates. True relational spirituality is not about agreement, it's about resonance, about sharing space without losing yourself, about listening not to respond, but to witness. When you master this level, love becomes clearer, boundaries feel natural, and relationship, whether brief or eternal, become temples of the soul. There comes a moment when the boundaries of the self begin to dissolve, not in theory, but in direct experience. Time slows, thoughts quiet, and for a breathless instant, you remember what you've always known, that you are not separate. You are not your name, your story, or even your body. You are the witness, the space, the awareness behind all things. This is the threshold of the transcendent mind, where consciousness, no longer resides in the individual, but begins to merge with the whole. Many who reach this stage report vivid perceptions that feel non-human, a surge of intuitive clarity, a flood of synchronicities that feel like a cosmic dialogue. And yet, for all its beauty, this level carries a shadow. The temptation is to stay there, to float in the ethers, chase mystical states, and slowly disconnect from the ordinary, messy, sacred work of being human. This is spiritual bypassing, disguised as enlightenment. Because without integration, transcendence becomes escape. Without shadow work, light turns blinding. And the ego, cleverly disguised, begins to whisper, "You've evolved beyond others." But truth doesn't need elevation. It needs embodiment. To anchor this stage, a simple ritual: insight, journaling. Each time you receive a deep realization, ask, "How can I live this? What action would honor this wisdom today?" The goal is not to stay in the clouds. It's to bring heaven into the soil of your life. I once heard a story of someone who accessed a unified field of consciousness during meditation. For minutes, they felt the entire universe breathing through them. But the true miracle? Afterward, they went home and simply began cooking for their family with more love. They started listening, truly listening, at work. The divine wasn't in the vision, it was in the return. This level is not about transcending the world, it's about realizing that you are the world and then choosing to serve it, not from duty, but from quiet reverence. The final stage of this spiritual arc is not the most dramatic. It's not filled with visions or altered states. It's simple, still, whole. Here, you no longer seek the light. You are the light, moving gently through the world. This is the level of integrated service, where your inner alignment becomes so embodied that life begins to move through you rather than from you. You no longer act from the desire to be seen, to be right, or to be safe. You act from presence, from love without expectation, from a clarity that arises beyond the mind. At this stage, many describe a new kind of ease. Synchronicities feel natural, not surprising. Purpose flows without striving. Even challenges feel like sacred choreography. But there's a final quiet trap here: the ego's longing for recognition. Even service, if done for validation, can constrict the soul's flow. Because the moment we seek to be seen for what we give, we begin to shrink what we are into what others perceive. A simple realignment practice: offer one genuine act of compassion each day in silence. No witness, no applause, just 5 seconds of kindness that no one may ever know. This activates what neuroscience now explores: subtle reward circuits triggered by purpose-driven behavior. Dopamine doesn't just reward achievement, it rewards alignment. And ancient wisdom confirms, as the Hermetic axiom says, as above, so below. To shift the world, we act, not in grand gestures, but in small, conscious offerings that ripple far beyond us. At this stage, your life becomes the message, not your words, not your rituals, your frequency, because in the end, you are not here to perform spirituality. You are here to embody it, to walk as a bridge between earth and spirit, to serve not from obligation but from overflow. You've now walked through the 5 levels of spiritual evolution. But let this truth sink in. These are not steps to be mastered in sequence. They are living frequencies, portals that open and return in cycles, each time revealing you to yourself in a deeper way. You may be in presence and then called back into emotional healing. You may expand into relational growth, only to be invited into transcendence, and finally into the still rhythm of embodied service. There is no rush, no race, no hierarchy, just a remembering, a return, a surrender to the truth that you are both the seeker and the path. So let us pause here, gently, and ask, what level feels most alive in you now? Where is your soul inviting you to soften, to listen, to shift? And perhaps more importantly, what one practice can you begin today, small, sincere, and sacred, that honors the level you're currently living? Because the journey isn't measured by what you've read or how much you know. It's felt in the way you breathe, the way you listen, the way you choose love when fear would be easier. Here's an affirmation to hold: I honor the level I'm in, I trust the path unfolding, and I allow the universe to live through me, one breath at a time. If this message resonated with your soul, not your mind, but that deeper, quieter place, you are invited to share it. Not for numbers, but for those who, like you, are remembering. Leave a comment, reflect on your level, or simply sit in silence and let the spiral continue its sacred turning within you. Your light matters, your presence transforms, and the universe is always listening.